Welcome to the Grit.org podcast with Colby Harris and Brian Harbin. In these episodes, they speak to top achievers in athletics and business to understand the habits and mindset they apply in order to build more grit.
I can! I will! I'm going to! Well, hello, my name is Brian Harbin. I'm our host for today's podcast at Grit.org, where we talk to top achievers in business and athletics just to learn how they have unlocked the power to build more grit in their lives. So today, super excited to have Colby Harris, who's really the first product of Grit.org. So just to tell you guys about Colby, so he's 19 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, and then actually moved to a small town, Highlands, North Carolina, an altitude of 4,000 feet. Where he then also moved to Fernandina Beach, Florida. He's got two older brothers and a younger sister and has always had a passion for sports, but really made his mark in surfing where from age 12 to 16, he never lost a contest in his hometown of Fernandina Beach in surfing. So he was student body president of his high school, has worked as a kayak guide, as well as started and run two business ventures. After graduating high school in the spring of 2020, he then came on board as one of our first interns at Grit University. And in 8 weeks, he helped start and run Grit Camp, where he led 7 counselors and 206 campers and made a profit of $6,000 for the summer. He then came back for his second summer in 2021, where we had 281 campers, 24 counselors, and in just 6 weeks made $10,000. And is now a full-time staff member at Grit.org. And when he's not working with Grit.org, you can find him surfing, working out, coaching flag football, or soccer. So welcome, Colby. Super excited to have you on.
Thanks, Brian. Couldn't be more excited to be here, kicking off the Grit.org podcast.
Yeah, so let's do this. So before we roll up our short sleeve shirts and get into this, so I wanted to open up with this kind of get-to-know-you type question. So share with us a quick story of your best or worst performance in the moment. So whether it was like a clutch moment in life where the game was on the line and you delivered or you didn't deliver.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I could take you all the way back actually to 5th grade. I mean, it was my first time playing on the 10-foot hoops, still in Highlands, North Carolina. So nonetheless, playing a basketball game, we're down by 2 points, a couple seconds left on the clock. Coach calls a timeout. Sure enough, draw up a play to get me the ball, take the final shot. So this was my first and actually my last attempt at that final shot. And so we draw up a play. We come back out on the court. We inbound the ball. Ball gets pushed around a little bit. And sure enough, we cue up the play. I get an off-ball screen, dart out to the perimeter, get the ball in my hands. 3 seconds left. 2. I put up a contested shot. 1. It's up. Slow motion moment. And sure enough, brick. And I mean brick, just back of the rim. We lose the game, and I immediately just start crying, full breakdown, most heartbreaking moment as a 10-year-old, just couldn't believe it. So I was completely shattered in the moment.
Oh, man, that's brutal. I think everybody can relate to those moments where they feel like they wish they could have it back, right?
Yeah, definitely. You don't get any second chances at stuff like that, so got to get it that first time around.
That's awesome. So, well, not awesome, but yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
So kind of rolling right into it. So growing up, you lived in 4 different cities by the time you were 11. So, born in Atlanta, city of 6 million people. But then you moved to Highlands, North Carolina, which is in the mountains. 2 hours north of there, 1,000 people. Then you move to Ponte Vedra Beach. Again, Jacksonville is a big city, 1 million people. Where then you move to Fernandina Beach, which is another kind of retirement town of 12,000 people. So just a lot of different experiences in just 11 years. So, how do you think living and having all those different experiences has kind of helped shape who you are today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not only were they different towns, but all in all, just the perspective it gave me to get an opportunity to not just see a few places, but go through that process. I mean, I actually went to 3 different schools in just 1 year, from Highlands to Ponte Vedra to Fernandina. And throughout that process, things get quiet and gets lonely just going from home to school and back home at the end of the day. So as I've grown up and obviously, broke out of that box and made friends and became became very comfortable, I've just never let myself forget what it was like to be that new kid on the block.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to, that feeling of loneliness, and is definitely tough to go through at that age for sure. And I think definitely makes you more relatable and empathetic for people that have been through that, though.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, definitely. And again, I'm very thankful for the whole process in and of itself, because I actually was, a little bit more of a shy kid when I was that age. And then as I grew up, from going through that process of moving and experiencing that, outsider sense, it just kind of created that urge to connect with people and build relationships. And it really taught me that life really is all about evolving, and you really just have to make the most of the cards you're dealt.
Yeah, no doubt. What would you say, kind of in addition to adjusting to being the new kid on the block, any other important life skills you felt like you learned at that point in your life?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Again, having to transition and make new friends, communication skills were huge. And as I grew up and got various jobs, from spinning milkshakes to being a kayaking tour guide, it just really taught me how to talk to people. And again, Highlands and Fernandina being retirement towns, a lot of older, wealthier, very particular people, it definitely tailored me to really know how to talk to a certain type of people. And it made it a lot easier to talk to a younger person especially. So I definitely carried that into, business and life in general. And that was just a huge asset that I've put into my life for the last 10 years.
Well, and developing those communication skills that age is paramount. I mean, especially a lot of kids nowadays, their communication skills, if they can't say it in a text or a comment, right? So being able to develop those skills that age is crucial. What about any advice that you could go back and give your 13-year-old self, and then maybe why that was important at that time for you to hear?
For sure. I would have to say just to take every trial and tribulation as an opportunity to grow. I dealt with the same common struggles as any other 13-year-old. Acceptance, insecurities, all the norms. And I really just feel like that's something that everyone experiences. So if I could go back and just remind myself that everything's going to be all right, and you got to capitalize on those opportunities rather than dwell on them, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that would have been crucial for me to hear at that age. I remember being 13, I was 4'11", 75 pounds, got cut from the baseball team, which was my passion for being too small, but it led me to tennis, which was my second favorite sport, and then ended up doing that for the next 5 years. So, but hearing that at that age, hearing that advice would have been huge, just saying, hey, look, it all worked out for a reason.
Exactly. And that's just how I feel about it, is that everyone really has these similar experiences, and although they vary, they definitely boil down to very similar emotions experienced. And that's why I like to take the opportunity to get intimate about what I've been through, because I feel like if everyone kind of took that step to just be a little more open, it would help that next guy overcome any obstacle that they're facing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what about, do you feel like there were any pivotal moments for you that were kind of like a rite of passage where you go through something, but then you come out a totally changed person on the other side?
Absolutely. So once we moved to Florida, the first thing I got into was surfing, as you've mentioned. So not only did it help me relax, just being in the water was very therapeutic. Anything in life or sports, school, my family, I could just leave it on the beach and get out and relax. But it was also the first solo sport I tried or I picked up. It used to just be basketball and soccer. So getting into a solo sport really taught me a lot about responsibility and dedication, and having to take myself out to improve was just a huge thing at that age, to really learn that my success was going to determine the work I put in.
And I'm surprised to hear you say that surfing isn't all that popular in Florida, but the thing about surfing that is not only physically demanding, having to get up on the board, the balance, the strength, all the paddling you have to do, but there's so many things that you can't control, like the weather, the size of the swell. So it's one of those sports it's hard to get better at, right? Because
yeah, oh, absolutely. It definitely took, like I said, that dedication. I actually backseated all other sports to just go all in on surfing. But yeah, back to another rite of passage for sure. A great one for me was actually stepping in as the student body president my senior year. And I just remember being a freshman and actually watching the student body president at the time at pep rallies, even at school in the lunchroom, no matter what it was. He kind of just carried a certain energy that led the rest of the school. And I immediately knew that was just a position I wanted to hold one day.
And being student body president, a lot of people want to take on a responsibility like that as like a resume builder. But for you, you took it to a whole nother level, right? So tell us about some of the things that you accomplished during your tenure as SGA president.
Yeah, definitely. Looking back on now, if you ask some classmates or the administration at the time, they'd probably tell you, I was a little annoying with it, with all the stuff that I wanted to have done. But for sure. So the first thing, and probably my most notable, I know it's been about 20 years since you were at a public high school, but I can tell you now the water is terrible. Go into those water fountains and stuff, heavy with iron, leaves that bloody taste in your mouth.
And Florida water, as bad as it is.
Right. The Florida, nothing like the mountain water I was used to, for sure. So nonetheless, I was a junior. I had just gotten initiated as student body president, and the first thing I did was go to the principal and say, hey, look, I've been seeing these filtered water fountains at gyms, private schools, various areas that I had been to, and I just recommended that we get it done, especially with plastic usage and stuff like that these days. I figured it was a great step to take. So sure enough, come fall of senior year, we got back to campus, and there were filtered water fountains on every building, or in every building on campus. So that was really exciting. They're still there to this day. And then another one I was really excited about is during our homecoming week, I actually started a flag football tournament for the students. So even though we have various games throughout the week, none of them really test athleticism or skill. So I was like, we need something that can really put everyone to the test in that way. So developed a flag football tournament that we would do on the Sunday to really kick off homecoming week, bring out a big speaker, go to the stadium, all that good stuff. And the best part about that one is really that it still runs to this day. So I kind of left a big part of my legacy in that one, and I hear great positive things about it to this day. So just being in that position, whether it was creating new events, orchestrating them, lining up stuff with the administration, acting as a student body president, really just helped me step into a new version of myself as a leader. And that's where I really started to develop these very entrepreneurial skills that I really still carry with me to this day.
And I'm sure rewarding to know that you left an impact, right? And nobody tried to impeach you, which is
big
good.
Time. Yeah, no serious problems. I might have had a few, but we won't get into that.
So at this point in your life, SGA president, obviously you're winning all these surfing competitions, got your businesses that you're running, and obviously being first cousins, had a lot of people in the family saying, hey, you really need to talk to Colby about working with you. And, and I remember our first conversation in November of 2019, and I knew you were a hard worker. I loved your passion and energy, and I knew you wanted more than most teenagers wanted, which was very appealing to me. So, but I remember that first call in November 2019, but tell us about that call from your perspective.
Definitely. I remember I was just at the house, and again, I was currently running a pressure washing business. It was about November, I think, of 2019 that you and I first touched base. And, I remember you just asked if we could get on a call for a little bit, and you kind of just laid everything out for me. And looking back on it, the first thing I remember is just immediately being all in. There was no ifs, ands, or buts after you had taken about 15-minute spiel to let me in on it. But the three main components that really made me, want to go all in were profit sharing, hands-on business experience, and implementing these time-tested life and success principles. I was always a very hard worker, clearly, as we're going through my stat sheet and whatnot. But I had never practiced any of these habits, such as working out, reading, or meditating. So I knew it would not only help me become a great entrepreneur, but also help me on my path of becoming a better young man.
Yeah, and so then over the course of the next few months, we started brainstorming different ideas. We didn't know exactly what we were going to be doing, but, we came up with the concept of Grit Camp because it was a combination of, your passion and our passion of sports and kind of taking advantage of my years of coaching and people I knew through that, but also, we roll through, we're getting close to spring break now, and then COVID hits, right? And, everything changed. We're 2 weeks before camp starts. Our facility isn't even locked in yet. Did you feel like you had any doubts at that point about your decision to come work at Grit University?
Honestly, no. I mean, there was a lot of factors. Clearly, again, a lot of things going on. I remember coming down just 2 weeks before, and you had mentioned the facility wasn't locked up. But not only that, we only had 2 signups. So we obviously had a mountain to climb, but I never had any doubts, and I say that honestly because I knew you were extremely determined to get Grit up and running, and create these new ventures, because you had told me, it had been nearly 20 years in the making. So between your full dedication to it and my determination to just continue to excel, I knew we would make it work. And then there's one very clear time that I remember of just being down here in Jacksonville with you. I'm pretty sure it was even that day that I was down where we were still trying to figure out if we did have a facility. And you just got to the point where you told me, look, no matter what happens, you're going to get great experience and we're going to make some money. So it was as simple as that.
Well, and, part of it too is just that's the mentality that we're implementing of like, hey, whatever happens, we're going to figure it out.
We thrive on that.
That's right. We find a way no matter what. And so summer gets kicked off, our facility's locked in. The first week we had 12 campers, but kind of a big victory for us that week. We had Doug Marone, who was the head Jaguar coach at the time, come and speak, which was great. And then by week 3, we had 64 campers. So summer's kind of rocking along. Do you felt like it, but then you're getting up at 5:30, taking a cold shower, working out, running camp, in the Florida heat all day. Then you guys are going out doing advertising and sales in the afternoon, working out, meditating, journaling and reading at night. So obviously full weeks. Do you feel like, was there ever a point where you feel like you hit a wall?
Yeah, I'd say I smashed a wall at one point. By week 3, I actually still hadn't had graduation, no prom, no senior trip. We were going to the Bahamas, and I was actually an ambassador for the trip, so I was going 50% off to a 4-night trip to the Bahamas, and I've only been out of the country once, so that was a huge bummer for me. But the icing on the cake, of course, is right there at week 3. A big group of my friends, including 3 of my best friends, all went to Panama City Beach to just kind of get out after all these cancellations and enjoy what would be our last summer collectively. So, of course, I was here doing exactly what you were saying, waking up at 5:30, running camp, using the afternoons for marketing. So each morning when I was waking up at 5:30, I would immediately kind of pull out my phone and I just have accumulation of Snapchats from the night before of everyone hanging out and having a good time. So this would definitely sting for a little bit, but then I'd snap out of it very quickly. And I would realize I had to go out that day and do everything in my power to make sure that I wasn't making these sacrifices in vain.
Yeah. And I know you guys did end up having prom and graduation rescheduled. Do you feel like being able to go to that was a nice recharge for you in the middle of the summer?
Absolutely. I mean, if I hadn't been able to do that, it would have been very difficult to continue to push forward. But sure enough, yes, one of my classmates, her grandmother actually felt so bad about our prom being canceled that she actually opened up her riverfront property and hosted a prom for us. So that was on Saturday. And then that Monday, we had graduation at the football field at Fernandina Beach High School, which actually hadn't happened in about 15 years. So we got to have graduation. I actually was given an opportunity to speak as well. So I was on stage when we actually threw our caps in the air. So looking out and seeing my classmates, my friends, my family, all these people who had such an influence on my life over the last couple of years, it was just a liberating moment to not only bypass COVID, let COVID be what it is, but for me to close the chapter of high school and just know that it's over and, it's time to move forward and let's see what's next.
Yeah, get some closure on it for sure. And
big time.
I remember you coming back that next Monday and you were just, had that pep in your step, nice and refreshed. I'm like, all right, Colby's back. We got that energy back out of him, which is great. And, so one of the things I had you guys do is, we do a weekly blog. And so I had you guys write a blog about kind of your experience up to that point. And the title of yours was Sacrifice. And I really like that because, understanding sacrifice means you understand delayed gratification and putting off something in the short run, knowing that, hey, in the long run, it's going to pay off. And it just shows a lot of, a big sign of maturity. But tell us some about that, about some of the character development you felt like you experienced that first summer.
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy summer, and I experienced a lot of things that I never have before, but I'd say the biggest one was really in my emotional control, especially with my anger. I always had a certain intensity to me that could sometimes become less of like a seriousness and become more of a temper tantrum almost. So I really credit this change to my daily habits through, not only running camp and being surrounded by these kids who are just, lights of life every day, but also the reading, meditating, journaling, and then also a big physical factor for me had to have been working out, and I know, not to get too scientific on it, and I don't even know a ton about myself, but yeah, when you do work out, it is proven that it releases those endorphins into your bloodstream and increases that feeling of satisfaction. So to be knocking that out first thing in the morning at 6 a.m., it really sets the tone for the day, and I would go hard. I mean, you would do the workouts with us, so we took it serious. If we're going to be up at 6 a.m. in the gym, we might as well make use of it. So I still work out early in the morning to this day because it's just become so necessary for my day-to-day.
Yeah, and just as the listeners frame of reference here, so before that first summer, you weighed in at 190 pounds. You had above 20% body fat, could barely do, 10 body push-ups and pull-ups.
On a good day.
And squats, right? But now 180 pounds, you put on, 15 pounds of added muscle and shaved your body fat down to about 12%, and now your bench is about 200 pounds, and same with your squat max. But so in addition to kind of that physical transformation that you went through, what would you say would be some of your other proud achievements from that summer?
A huge moment for me at the end of that summer was actually at the internship banquet that you and Jen hosted for me and the other intern. And Jen had actually put together a video, just an appreciation video for me and Dylan. And it was basically a compilation of all the kids, or majority of the kids that had come to camp that summer. And they were just taking a few seconds to share what they liked about us and the memories they had with us. And, brutally honest, some of the things they might not have liked about us. But nonetheless, that was the first time I'd ever really felt like I'd impacted someone else's life, or at least on that sort of scale. I mean, it was probably upwards of 100 kids in that video talking about me and just telling me how much I meant to them. So to be in that moment and really seeing it after the hard work was done, the sweat was put in, the mental, all of that stuff that had just been every day, day in, day out, all summer. It just reminded me of my counselors and how thankful I was for them and how big of a part they played in my life, and the memories and lessons I shared with them. I could never take them back. So it was definitely a shining moment.
Yeah, and that video was all Jen's idea, and it was really cool to be able to see the impact you guys had made through the eyes of the kids, which was fun. And you mentioned the banquet, so that was something that we did really just to celebrate you guys. We had a private room at Seasons 52, 6-7 course meal with, family and significant others. And that's when we watched the video, and then you guys get your check for the summer. So you guys get your weekly salary and then your profit sharing check then. So you get your big check for $6,000. But then at that point, you go back to Fernandina. The plan was for you to start college in the fall, but tell us kind of what happened next.
Right. So it was interesting, obviously COVID hit, so getting my paperwork and stuff, all that lined up was a huge hassle, abruptly leaving school. But another big thing driving the outcome of me not attending school last fall was that UNF was the only school I ever wanted to go to, University of North Florida. And I had actually been denied admission twice. So I applied twice, got denied twice. So I honestly think it was a blessing in disguise, because even though community college online is always an option, I really wanted to make sure I had time to continue to just hustle and stash as much cash as possible while living at home in Fernandina. So at that time, I actually picked up 2 jobs. I was working at a high-end golf club as a golf cart attendant. So, scrubbing clubs, talking to members, cleaning carts and stuff like that. Great business, very cash heavy again. And then outside of that, I also got a job at a car wash as a car wash attendant. So getting rims, stuff like that. And, obviously I was just enjoying it, being back home and just working as hard as I could. And my routine had to evolve, obviously, because it was no longer the grit show. I was working on someone else's schedule, but I still made sure to get that workout in every day. Again, it had become a necessary action day in, day out to get in the gym.
Yeah, and I remember that was something you definitely made a point to keep rolling. So then January rolls around, and then you were committed to come back for another summer at Grit University and help run Grit Camp. And so you would come down every Friday. So all the kids that signed up for Grit Camp, they'd get their, water bottle with their name on it, a T-shirt, and then we'd hand deliver it. Like on a Friday, we'd coordinate with the mom. And so you and I had a lot of windshield time together driving around to deliver these water bottles and T-shirts. And that's kind of when we started the process of talking about maybe you coming on, full time in the fall. But tell us a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So by January, I was still at the car wash and at the golf club as well. But I started to have this use it or lose it mentality as an entrepreneur, honestly. So I kind of wanted to test myself. And I just told myself, I was like, all right, create an idea, implement it, and then scale it as best as possible. So I came up with my second business, which was the Efficient Assistant. I just defined it as an assistance business where I felt that if you needed a light bulb changed, your gutters cleaned, furniture moved or assembled, you should just call in some young guys like myself and we'll take care of it for you. So I did that up until summer 2021 when I had to fully commit back to Grit Camp. But back to coming on full time, I didn't want to limit myself financially, but very similar to summer 2020, I knew that I was doing something bigger here and that it was something I wanted to be a part of. I love the idea of being the first product and almost like this poster boy. You even said that to me one time. I was like, I like the sound of that.
That's right.
So again, there was just a lot of factors into it, but the biggest one would have to be just I loved the relationship we had. It really just came down to our visions aligning and really created a pretty dynamic duo. So definitely knew it was a good choice for me.
Yeah, and I remember those conversations we would have, driving around, and anytime one of us would have an idea, we would start to build on it. It would be yes and instead of, trying to limit the ideas, we kept expanding on them. And it was just kind of like being this, very much like a startup feel to it. And we could be creative and talk about all the different, places we could take this thing. And, but then I was thinking about, okay, well, if you come on full time, how are we going to keep you busy full time, and how are we going to generate more revenue in addition to what we get from Grit Camp?
Right. Yeah. So I knew that we would just have to continue to work on building things. So as the brainstorming grew, we knew it was time to launch Grit Club as well as start a podcast. Especially, I remember me personally mentioning it to you, and you were like, "Oh, like I love that you would be interested in doing something like that." Just because I've always loved speaking and having good conversation. So it really only seemed right to get something like this going where we could not only continue to stay connected with the people that are already in our network or that go to our camps, but to expand and just put out good quality content, especially in such a crowded space with a lot of nonsense these days.
Yeah. And, as we get closer to the summer, you were in a situation where you needed a reliable car. And, I'd had my Hyundai Sonata for 8 years, my reliable car. I'd put, 100,000 plus miles on this thing. But I wanted to get a truck, I wanted to upgrade. So I got my Jeep Gladiator. And so I ended up selling you my Sonata. And so here we are, maybe a month before camp starts. And tell us what happened to that Sonata.
Yeah, it's funny you say reliable because, we sold my mom's old Honda Pilot that she drove for about 5 years. My oldest brother, Chase, drove it for about 3 years. My second oldest brother, Joey, drove it for about 3 years. And then I drove it for about 3 years. So we sold that car. I'd take your Sonata. Again, I was coming down on Fridays, so I'm leaving Jacksonville. I get back to Ferrandina, about 500 yards from the house when just boom, engine cuts, lights start flashing. I'm like, oh no. So thankfully I was able to get off the road safely. Car wouldn't crank, and sure enough, we get it towed. Next day I'm at my house, I'm in my room, and I get the call. And sure enough, engine's blown, which anybody with a car knows. Engine, transmission, you're having a bad day. So sure enough, they tell me $5,500 out the door with, labor and the engine itself, which was more than we actually purchased the car itself for. So I remember just completely down and out. It's the lowest I've felt in a long time. And then sure enough, I'm facing my palms, sitting in my room when I get a text from you. And sure enough, the gist of it was very simple. It was just, look, if a busted engine is the biggest mountain we have to climb this summer, then we're in luck. Don't get drained over it. The only thing we can do is move forward. So it just reminded me that I had good people in my corner and that I couldn't allow myself to dwell on it. We had too many things on our plate for me to get locked up in that. And sure enough, the beauty of the unknown, after sending inquiries to Hyundai for about 2 months, before I knew it, we had a brand new engine dropped in there free of cost. So definitely got the hookup on that one.
Yeah, I tried to buy the car back, but yeah.
No longer a limit.
That's right. Well, and again, kind of goes back to the mentality of it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it.
Yeah,
and it was another good test going into the summer. But, and then you move back into HQ. What do you feel like was different for you coming into that second summer?
The first thing was definitely that, I was going to be a lone intern, so it's definitely going to be a me versus me situation. I was always very competitive, so that was a very driving factor in 2020. I was like, I'm going to compete with this other intern, just because that's just a competitive nature I have. And then I also had spent the last 10 months working and living at home, just hustling and grinding every single day. So I knew it'd be easy to transfer back into Grit University life because I was hungry for more and, starving. I couldn't wait to get back over here and just get back down to it.
Yeah, and I know, the plan was for us to have another Grit University intern, and maybe we thought it was going to be easier to get another intern than it was. But, we said, hey, if that's not going to work out, then let's really beef up our high school counselors and make this the best place for high school counselors to come work. And by the way, quick plug too, if anybody is looking for a summer job next summer, go to grituniversity.com and learn how to become an intern. And so we go into summer 2021. We had 2 less weeks of camp, but had 75 more campers than the previous year and 14 additional counselors. But tell us what it required to kind of keep growing Grit Camp at that point.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me was to not get too caught up in the management side of it. I mean, we were in the exact position we wanted to be in, growing and expanding, obviously, in our numbers. So I just wanted to continue to roll with it. I couldn't get too caught up. And I credit a lot of that growth just to the culture that I feel like we created at camp. For our counselors, we weren't nagging them. We weren't breathing down their necks. All of them are athletes as well. So we never discouraged them from their activities outside of camp. And through solid pay, lunch included every day, and having a chance to influence these kids at camp, they wanted to be a part of Grit Camp. And like you said, you've always had a vision to make it the number one place for high school and college age students to work in Jacksonville. So outside of that, it was the same for our campers. We required one thing, and that was effort. And some kids do have to be pushed harder than others, but they all experience that same sensation of achievement when they can break down a barrier and just push that one step further. Definitely where the grit part comes into our camp. So anyhow, it also came back to me and you as well. And that's where it all started, with us in the forefront to create this culture that, we're going to come in and give it our all day in, day out, and just lead by example. So the culture was everything, and I can't wait to just continue to grow and expand on that and showcase it to everyone.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned too, like embracing the growth. I think where we didn't have some of the challenges we had the previous summer, but what was it, halfway through the summer, there's a hurricane barreling straight over Jacksonville, and we've got 60 kids at camp on a Wednesday. We're like, what are we going to do? So we end up renting a gaming truck. But just, again, kind of that mentality of like, all right, well, this is our next challenge. Let's figure out a way to overcome it. And so, we go through the summer, and about midway through the summer, you have a breakthrough moment. So tell us a little bit about what happened while you're out selling advertising one day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, what I call my anything's possible moment. And you'll definitely know why here in a second. But yeah, so I was out selling corporate sponsorships, and I kind of knocked out all the businesses in the area. It'd been a couple hours. So I was like, all right, let me go get some dinner. And then I'll head back to HQ, settle in for the afternoon like any other afternoon. So nonetheless, I get my dinner. It's already boxed up, but I'm eating it at the restaurant. When I'm scrolling social media, I'm on Instagram, and I come across a post from Matthew McConaughey, and he's promoting his new book. And he says, share a viral value that you believe if everyone incorporated it into their life, the world would be a better place. And I just kind of had something come over me where I was like, I need to talk about grit and what it means to me and just how influential it's been. So I end up going back home. I immediately head back to HQ. I mean, I hop in the car. I take my food, like it was already boxed up. I close it straight to the car, and I head back to HQ. So I'm thinking about what I want to say. I set up my phone in front of the Grit University sign. I got my Grit Camp t-shirt on, and I just shoot a quick 30-second clip and put it on my Instagram story. And Matthew McConaughey had said that he'd be sharing some of his favorites to his story. So that was the ultimate goal. Well, time starts passing. I had mentioned to a few people, like, I'm anxiously waiting to get on Matthew McConaughey's Instagram story. And it was funny. All the responses were fairly similar. Don't get too excited, or that's a long shot, something like that. Very pessimistic, but I understood. No one wanted to see me get let down or anything. So nonetheless, I get my food back out. I start eating and almost even forgot about it. And then sure enough, while I'm eating, I get a notification on my phone from Instagram. And it's officially McConaughey shared you to their story. So I like eyes wide and I'm like, all right, let me just open it first. And sure enough, I open it and there I am, blue check next to his name and all on Matthew McConaughey's Instagram story, sharing what grit means to me and just how important it's been. So that was a moment where I just jump up and just start screaming, anything's possible. Like anything is possible. And that was such a shining moment where I realized that I was just scratching the surface and what we could do here. I mean, here I was on Matthew McConaughey's story in front of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people showcasing the brand and what it entails. So it was just a moment that I knew I was in the right place, doing the right things, and I needed to continue to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah, and I remember too, we got the Instagram clip at the very end of the video to show at camp that week. And when we get to that part, I look at all the counselors in the back of the room and all their jaws just dropped. They're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was a classic moment. I love that. I was a big dog on campus that day.
That's right. And, what was really serendipitous about that whole thing, too, is ironically, totally unrelated. I had brokered the domain name greenlight.com that summer. And then so one of my friends had sent me his book, greenlights.com. And in his book, he talks about right before he got the dazed and confused part, a book that he read that changed his life is The Greatest Sales in the World by Og Mandino, which for me, when I was 18, was a book that I read that changed my life. And when you moved into Grit HQ your first summer, that was the first book I had you read. So for, us to kind of had that common thread with him was kind of neat. But anyways, kind of back to the summer, what would you say was kind of a peak moment for you during that second summer?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously that really set the tone about midsummer, and there was a lot of great accomplishments. But as you mentioned, we went from about 7 counselors to 24 counselors in 2021. So a big moment for me was actually at our counselor appreciation luncheon. So we all went out, and me and you, because we didn't have a second intern, we believed that we should build in some bonus packages for some of our standout counselors and our full-time counselors. And, I had my banquet a few days following, so I knew I was going to be taken care of. So going to the counselor appreciation luncheon that day and to see everyone's not just enjoyment of being a part of Grit Camp, but to give them that bonus check and that feeling of, you did your part and you were taken care of in turn for it. So I just love that time because, again, it's crazy that some of these kids are a year, 2 years younger than me. And I remember my first time getting my first check like that. It's just a sensation like no other. So I loved that everyone really enjoyed being a part of it. And hopefully, we'll get to have them back next summer as well.
That's right. And like you said, too, the fun part was the fact that nobody was even expecting anything. It was just a total straight up surprise and bonus. So just to see their faces was pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. And then like you mentioned too, we had your banquet a couple days later. You get your profit sharing check to make, $10,000 total for the summer, which was awesome. And then you take a month off and then you move back into Grit HQ full time. And so tell us kind of a day in the life of what you do now.
Definitely would love to. Yeah, so each Sunday I fill out a spreadsheet that we call the plan. So it starts at 6 a.m. and goes all the way to about 9 p.m. with half-hour intervals, Monday through Friday. And I'll just go in and fill that out to start the week. And then every morning I pretty much follow the same schedule that I did during camp. I get up about 5:30-ish, work out by 6, and then back to HQ by about 8 a.m. with some breakfast, whatever it may be. So each day is a little different, but right now I'm spending a few hours every day working on a mental performance coaching program, getting ready for Grit Club. Outside of that, I'll have various meetings, whether it be networking or with attorneys, potential camp locations, a lot of behind-the-scenes type of stuff. And then me and you still carve out plenty of time to sit down and brainstorm and talk social media, new ideas, whatever it may be, as well as I still get to take time to, like you said, coach. So right now we're coaching soccer and flag football. And then I'm also helping at the North Florida School of Special Education with their golf club, which I'm really enjoying. So all in all, like I said, each day is different, but my favorite part about it is just the autonomy to be able to do what I love and make time for a event with family and friends, or if there's pumping swell, go out to the beach and get some waves on a Wednesday morning. Not many people get to do that. So again, it's just the beauty of being able to live life on my terms with a few sacrifices here and there. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think part of, being happy and living in the moment is just having that autonomy of schedule, for sure, that you earn, right?
Exactly. That's the big part. You got to earn it.
So share with us kind of what's next for you or where you see all of this going.
Yeah, well, I love being here and being a part of it. So all in all, I definitely know to shoot for the stars. So I see billions of lives being changed by what we're doing. And one thing I say a lot, and when people ask me about what I'm doing here and my experiences with it, is I don't want anyone to feel how I felt at my lowest points, and I want everyone to feel the enjoyment of life that I experience now. Although our concepts and our principles and our habits, they can apply to anybody, but my main focus is definitely in the next generation, from 90s babies to Gen Z and millennials and generations that haven't even been born yet, because the world can be a very toxic and unhealthy place if you let it be. Emphasis on if you let it be. So a saying I love is hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. I feel like we're in the good times. So we have to do everything in our power to make sure that we don't reverse all that hard work that past generations put in.
Yeah, I love that, and so true with that statement for sure. And so, now that you've got some life experience under your belt, how do you define success?
Yeah, I'm still painting a picture every day as to what that means to me. If you would have asked me when I was 10 years old, still living in Highlands, I would have just told you I need to make a lot of money one day, because that's all it really looked like to me. But after experiencing a lot of trial and tribulations, I've learned what really takes to lead a happy life. Take the success matter out of it, but a happy life first, success will follow. Right now, I would say to me, success just means enjoying the day-to-day, and not just enjoying the day-to-day, but the people around you, and especially being able to take care of those people around me. So I really believe that for me, I just need to keep pushing forward and putting in the work to do my best to lead a happy life, and then make sure I can take care of those that mean the most to me. I
love it. And if there's people out there that like what you're doing, and how do you feel like they can best support you and help spread the message?
Absolutely. The easiest one would definitely just be keeping up with our social media, the blog, and now our podcast as well. And if it does apply to you, or you feel like it might apply to someone else, just please share it. Send it to someone and let them know that it's something that could be very beneficial. And then also listen to what we're saying. And if you don't already, incorporate it into your own life, because that's the best way to influence someone else, is lead by example. Let them see what it does for you, and then they might just implement it into their own life.
Yeah, and as you know, grit.org, we are founded on the 12 principles we call the Grit Creed. So you can go to gritcreed.com and see our 12 principles. And that's how we kick off camp every single day, is going through the Grit Creed with the kids. They repeat it back to us. So them backwards and forwards. But of the 12 parts of the Grit Creed, which one do you feel like resonates the most with you?
Definitely, I will lead by example, because my purpose is larger than me. That one is so powerful in my life, because I had never not only thought of something like that, but I had never led a life that entails that until I became a part of Grit University and grit.org in general. So right now I can tell you that without reminding myself that line day in, day out, it would have been a lot harder to get through those 6 a.m. workouts. It would have been a lot harder to get through camp days. It would have been a lot harder to go out in the afternoon and keep pushing for these 12-hour days. So just being able to remind myself of that, it's what's kept me so disciplined to this day.
And just a couple more questions here, but what would you say has been the most impactful book that you've read, and why?
So I would have to go with Tuesdays with Morrie.
That's a good one.
Yeah, if you're not familiar, so pretty much I actually read that book when I was about 16, and it really just goes back to the professor Morrie and then his student Mitch, and they had a great relationship through his college days. And of course, like most school relationships, they're all, oh yeah, we'll stay in touch, blah, blah, and then sure enough, 25, 30 years go by and they haven't seen each other. Well, Morrie has an illness. He's slowly dying, and when he touches base with Mitch again, they just take every Tuesday to go through these life lessons. You know, he shares some wisdom with him. And the part that really stands out to me is after all that time has passed, Maury is almost disappointed to hear that Mitch has led an unfulfilled life and gave up on a lot of his dreams and didn't, you know, take that step to do what he really wanted to do. He kind of just folded under the pressure. And that's a huge fear of mine is, could I have done this if I tried? Or did I not go as hard as I could have? So it just gave me a lot of perspective at that age to take risk and do what feels right in my heart. You know, don't get too caught up in anything else. Just do what feels right and to always go for it.
I love it. And last question, kind of a fun question, but, you know, for our listening audience to kind of get a picture and a taste of what it's like working with kids all day at camp from age 6 to 12. But yeah, so what's the good, the bad, the ugly of working with kids age 6 to 12?
Yeah, there's a lot of good, a lot of bad, and there's definitely some ugly in there too. So first thing, I mean, it's kind of a double whammy because it's a good and a bad, but they're brutally honest. So that's one thing you can rely on. So whether they were telling me, you know, I mean, we're running around 8 hours a day and we get very involved. If I had been sweating all day and I kind of smell bad, they let me know, hands down, no questions asked. But on the flip side, they could build me up a little bit, you know, like say something nice, like, oh, Colby, you got big muscles. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, appreciate it. But then, yeah, there's a classic story, too, from summer 2021, a little bit of the ugly. This day was pretty tough for me. I actually went and filled up my water bottle, and then I'm about to take a sip when all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's like a little wood chip in here. So I'm like, why is there a wood chip in my water bottle? Well, I look a little closer, and there is a baby lizard in my water bottle. And it's really funny because I immediately get up. I'm like, okay. You know, I'm investor gadget on these kids. Like, I got to figure out who did this. So I start running around asking all the kids that we kind of have like some lizard kids constantly catching them. So I knew where to start. And it was really funny because they were almost like a little gang. You know, no one would tell me who did it. So at the end of the day, I say at least they understand camaraderie. So it's pretty funny.
That's right. Plausible deniability. Well, Colby, thank you so much for being on today. This was a lot of fun, and appreciate you guys listening, our listening audience to the Grit.org podcast today. Like it, share it, subscribe it, send to a friend. Join us next time. And Colby, you guys will be hearing more of him as our host for a lot of these podcasts. So thanks again for being on, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Brian. Super excited for the next episode.